You know, if you're like me, you've been wondering about all these data security breaches recently. It seems like one thing after another in the news, these big breaches, and we're all wondering what's going on, what's the problem? So I felt like I had to bring one of the experts in. So I hope you'll stick around. My good friend from Varonis is going to be here. I'm going to ask a bunch of tough questions about these hacks and maybe just what's going on. So stay with us. I think you'll learn something. Hi, I'm Ed Amoroso from Tag Cyber. I want to welcome you to my discussion here. I have my friend Yaki Faitelson, who runs Varonis, and I'm going to ask him some questions. I think they're going to be tough questions about data security. As I sit here, we're filming in October 2022 right now, and there's been one thing after another, just one big breach after another. They just seem to keep coming. They all involve data, and I figure, where better to get some advice than to talk to Yaki about data? You guys know data security, that's for sure. Welcome, Yaki. Nice to see you. Do you agree? It seems like one thing after another, right?
Yeah, you know, it's all about the data. You know, in security you have means to an end and the end it's the data. If you dissect the anatomy of almost every breach, it's just all about the data.
You know, let's start with Uber. And then we'll go work our way through a couple of these. So with the Uber thing, you have this kid who breaks in. I think he constantly went after some employee. They eventually gave in, he gets in. What's your analysis? What was the problems? A lot of people have been watching these attacks and are wondering, is this something new? Is this something different? But it seems like the common denominator is data.
Yeah, it's data, but it's always the same. The reality is today, when you look at a modern enterprise, it's very hard to define the perimeter. And it's very easy to do reconnaissance, to know a lot about people today with all the social media and everything that's going on, with all the information in the internet. And when you have a bad actor that is a bit sophisticated and tenacious, he will be able to get in. What happened primarily after COVID is that all your information is really concentrated in the center. You have very little on your endpoint. So you're in a situation that it's very easy to identify where is the data and where is the data that is the most vulnerable. So what happens is that you have many windows and doors and a lot of concentration in the data repository. So once you are in, if you think about the Uber situation, you're scanning the file shares, you find PowerShells with a username and password, you know, and this is something that with some abnormal behavior and least to no access, if you know the access control, most probably you will not get into. After that, you can go into the IAM and to object storage like S3 and then Slack, obviously Google Drive and Confluence, and eventually take down the whole enterprise.
But Uber's got a big security team. I mean, they have the best tools. They have good people. Well, what are people doing wrong?
So I don't know about Uber specifically, but I can tell you what I see.
We don't know what we don't know.
Yeah, I see in many enterprises that you have this security stack that have the wrong noise to signal ratio. People are overwhelmed with a lot of alerts that mean nothing. And most of these attacks are related to data, and you are not protecting the data itself. So you have a lot of noise in the way to the data. It's very easy to bypass the perimeter. Once you are here, you have tremendous attack surface that are opening. If you look at all these file shares and these SaaS repositories, you see that you take a random user from his share 50, sometimes 90% of the data they can access is not relevant for them. And if you can't answer three basic questions: who can access the data, who is accessing the data, what is critical, it's impossible to protect your digital assets, and almost always they are after the digital assets. Cyber attacks are never fun, but the damage is happening when they are taking information.
Let me ask a question. What you just described is about as foundational as it gets. Where's your data? Who's going to do what? Do you think that as an industry, we're spending too much time on the fancy stuff and not enough time on the foundational? Like I often think that maybe we're building these houses on foundations that are Like, is that the problem? That we're just, because what you're describing is what we knew,
that
we knew we had to do that in 1975.
I think that the world is changing. As I said, it's very hard to define the perimeter. There are so many ways to get in. Data is hybrid in the cloud and on-prem. There is tremendous amount of sophistication with bad actors. And once you can compromise one machine or just one user, there is so much data that you can access. And I think that the other issue is that without tremendous automation, it's impossible to protect these enormous data sets. But as you said, unfortunately, many times, CISOs are focused in the wrong places. If you want to protect information and digital assets, you need to protect them in the source. If you will try to protect everything else but your data will get exposed.
Is a definition of perimeter, could it be wherever access can be done?
Wherever.
Is that the new, that's a hard definition, right? Because that can be anywhere,
anything,
right?
yeah, from anywhere. People are working from anywhere. You want to protect your digital assets, you need to protect it in the center.
So somebody watching, they're thinking, all right, why do we just keep seeing one after another? It's reasonable to say, number one, that we didn't get the basics of data security down.
Exactly.
We're doing a million things, but the basics are probably not there, which is kind of depressing because it's been quite some time. And for me, I would say a second thing is just, and you said it with the world changing, that the complexity of what we're dealing with has changed the perimeter. And so it's not even like it's an easy problem anymore. It's a harder problem. I don't know that we ever got it right before, but would you say, is that the two things? The data security is wrong and the perimeter and everything's gotten so hard, it's just harder to even do than it was before?
It's exactly that.
One and two.
Exactly. The perimeter is everywhere. As you said, it's just an access point. You're starting to have a world, if you want to define it, you have an access point and you have the data store.
Right.
And the data stores are so big and so complex. You know what? On average, there are 40 million unique permissions entry in an average size organization. And you have tremendous adoption of the SaaS application. And we say SaaS application like it's a small thing. Some of them, they are gigantic platforms. Think about ERP platforms, CRM platform like Salesforce.com, massive data lakes like S3, huge collaborations like G Drive or Microsoft 365 with Slack and with Teams and people sharing a lot of information. And the other thing, regardless of what happened in the economy, in the world, we're becoming more dependent on data. And in order to extract value from this data, you need to collaborate. So what is happening, you are really generating tremendous tension between productivity and security. The information is the lifeblood of the business, but it's very hard to manage it. Cyber attacks are like car accidents. Thank God, per capita, we don't have many of them. Right. But when they are happening, you can lose your enterprise, intellectual property, customer information, massive lawsuit, reputation damage, and stuff like that. Think about a company like an Uber. It's really an information bank of tens of millions of people, maybe hundreds of millions of people, and this comes with a lot of responsibility. And I'm sure that they have endpoint security and cloud infrastructure and everything, but they can't monitor abnormal behavior on file shares. They can't understand that the right users has abnormal behavior to critical data stores, and then you can inhale tremendous amount of data. And the other thing, there is so many ways to get to information, and this enable lateral movement with ease. So many times today, you just search an information and you can find certificates and tokens and passwords. And you have this API interconnectivity between SaaS applications. You just move literally and inflict tremendous amount of damage on the organization.
This is no longer just a theoretical problem. It's a personal one for CISOs at this point. Like this, they carry some...
They carry a lot of risk, and the other thing that is happening is that the world moves very fast and the bad actors becoming more and more sophisticated. It's always much easier to do damage than to fix stuff. So the key is to be in the right place, that you can solve the problem and you can solve it completely. And the first thing, the holy grail for every CISO, Ed, is to make sure the right people can access the right data. If you can do that and understand abnormal behavior and what is critical and have effective forensics, your enterprise will be by and large protected.
Yeah, I don't see how anyone could disagree with that. Easier said than done, but definitely true. So let's go from one topic to another. Let's talk Twitter. So we all watch Mudge, icon in our industry, one of the best sort of at offense, capable guy, up testifying about these problems that exist at Twitter. Now, I've gone public saying, I think that's right, but it's true everywhere. I'm sort of giving the impression to Congress that it's the only place that's a problem. What's been your experience? I mean, the problems they're describing sound eerily similar to what you've just been talking about. It's the same thing at Twitter. Am I reading that right?
100%. Obviously, Twitter is very visible and, they have much more data than the average enterprise, but they have also much more resources, engineering resources, automation resources, AI resources, and they can't get a handle over it. Just regular enterprise, a law firm, a manufacturer, a bank, it's much harder for them. And everybody just generating massive amount of data, and people are not paying attention to the massive adoption of SaaS. You have these SaaS applications that have unique permission modeling, and they all geared towards collaboration. Ed, I think that the right way to think about the risk, you have the most risk in the places that you have the most critical data, a lot of it with a lot of collaboration. When you have that, it's very easy to jeopardize a system like that, to compromise it, and you have it in every organization. So, we at Varonis, we are maniacal to have the right coverage. We intensely focus to have the right coverage and then to provide a lot of automation. Humans with processes can't win this battle. This is over. Now you need to put a lot of automation around it. The other thing is, if obviously you see thousands of breaches and it's always involving data. And when it's happening, usually the conventional security tools, if you will, have, if they bypass them, they have very little value.
So for people watching right now, tell me if this is the right advice, that when they're looking at this Twitter hack, this big, not so much a hack as just a report that there are these terrible vulnerabilities, that rather than look at it as, oh my gosh, look what's going on at Twitter, a better interpretation would be, this is a general problem that could be going on and probably is going on in my own organization.
Exactly.
Does that sound right to you?
This is exactly
okay.
Right.
I wish they would say that to Congress. I watched the whole thing, and it was always about Twitter, and I'm yelling at the TV saying, no, I think it's everybody. We all have that problem. It's very
this
frustrating.
is your job. I need to protect the data stores, and you need to educate Congress.
I guess so. I blogged about it, and boy, did I get flamed on that one. But I really do think, what you were talking about, both for Uber and Twitter, like what I'm taking from it, what I've believed for a long time, is that these foundational issues, they're not easy, but if you don't get it right, then you're probably going to have risk. Maybe you don't get hacked, but you might, and you shouldn't be surprised if you do.
This is the biggest risk, and you know what is funny? That this risk is very tangible. When you have platform like ours, how much excessive access control you have, the lack of ability to audit changes, to understand what is critical, but also you can also do the remediation in a very tangible way. The key when you're doing the remediation, Ed, is not to break business process. So this constant tension between productivity and security, this is something that the CISO need to understand very well how to do. And also, every organization, primarily large organization, they have a lot of processes. So how to introduce the right automation that you can do with just with small teams can really solve big problems.
I want to ask you about a report you guys put out. We see at Tag Cyber, over the last few years, everyone would say cloud, 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 but our customers were saying SaaS, SaaS, SaaS. And it always struck me that maybe they were just using the same term for different things, but I don't think that's right. I think there is a difference between pushing workloads out to Google and using SaaS applications for using what. But you guys did a very cool report that I read about data exposure there, with some pretty scary numbers. And I wrote some of them down, like 81% of these companies that you surveyed had exposed SaaS data. Really scary, almost was 6% exposing it to the public internet. Like I looked at that and I said, that matches my sensibility. But tell me about the report. How are you sharing that with customers?
We have a bird's eye view to everything that's going on. We have, more than 7,000 customers, and now we're supporting a lot of these SaaS applications, from Google and Box and Salesforce.com, GitHub and others. Obviously, Office 365, we have big product suite around it. And we just see that it's a big problem. The adoption is very fast. The data is much more in the hand of the end user, so the opening of the blast radius is tremendous and really exponential. And without, first and foremost, visibility to what's going on, is, as you said, customers trying to understand what's going on with the workloads, which the data is on the SaaS level, on these big platforms that many times are interconnected, and obviously they're internet-facing applications and platforms. So you really need visibility. Then you need the ability to understand what is critical. Each and every one of them have a tremendous permission model. If you look at just Salesforce.com, the way that it works, the level of permissions and the whole data set, but then go to a CRM admin and ask them just to visualize who can access what data, the effective permissions, it's virtually impossible. It's something that is very hard to do. The CISO have no visibility, and almost all the data is PII, and super critical data. Just think about this repository, it's gold. You can lose customer data, or you can lose your whole competitive advantage if you're losing this data set. And you have 10, 15 big platforms like that, and then you have the object storage like S3 and obviously Azure Blobs. This is just tremendous data lakes. And I think that this is only going to grow because you always have new SaaS applications and these repositories are growing, and you have the interconnectivity of APIs. So if you will not be ahead of the game, if this will not be a place that you are going to protect your information, this is most probably the biggest exposure, hands down.
How are people getting through audits without this? Have the auditors just not figured out that they should be checking for that?
They're starting to do it more and more. This is something that we definitely see, that they're starting
because
to do
then
more and more.
everybody would fail. You'd have failed audits constantly.
Yeah, but
I mean, that's a good thing. Like that, actually, as a CISO, here's the secret. Failed audits are awesome. As long as you have enough rope that you don't get fired, right? Too many failed audits can be bad for your career. Exactly. But a couple of good failed audits will get you some budget, get you platform. But in this area, I guess over the last 10 years, maybe the auditors just haven't been pushing hard enough, because I think these problems have been pervasive.
I think with some of these applications, they have audits in some of the industry, but it's coming more and more. And the other thing that is happening is just a lot of breaches. So I think regulation, together, unfortunately, with high-profile breaches, will generate a lot of awareness.
And you know what happens? When the auditors dictate 10 things and you have budget for 10 things, then that's all you do. And suddenly you've got auditors dictating your architecture. That may be a little bit of the problem here, that we're forced to do a lot of other things that don't allow us to have time to do the foundational things.
Yeah,
maybe that's part of the problem.
I think that, many times it's just part of the problem. The other thing is just many times you have knee-jerk movement and not really deep, thoughtful conversation regarding the risk. But like anything else, eventually reality hits, and it's very evident where the risk is. But another thing, Ed, is without tremendous automation, you can't solve this problem. So many times CISO sits in front of it, and it's look like a mountain that they can't climb. And we in Varonis, we really try to help them solve it by introducing a lot of automation. You just need to automate the process. And automation is productivity gains, how you can really solve it end to end without a lot of effort. And this is what we are trying to do.
Are people listening to you?
They are.
I hope so. It's getting frustrating. Like for me, it reaches a fever pitch every time I see one of these. I take them very personally. I devote my whole life to this. And one attack after another, I feel like sometimes particularly with the bigger companies, that we're not making enough progress. But listen, do me a favor, keep pushing, keep selling your product, keep helping people understand the importance of data security. And maybe we'll get our arms around this. I think that the foundational view, that sounds right to me, and I think that may be our way out of this. So
I definitely believe it.
well, keep doing what you do.
Thank you, sir.
Well, listen, on behalf of our team here at TAG, thanks for stopping by. Maybe we'll have you back next week when there's 5 more big breaches this week. Let's
Thank you.
hope not.
Thanks for having me.
Always good to see you.
Thank you so much.
And for everyone else watching, we'll see you next time.